This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
What I like about our producer, not much really when I think about it, but what he does is he blasts us out of here when we first come in with the other radio stations and the news, and then when we get started, he turns it down so I can't hear it. That way, he can be real sneaky, which, I appreciate in a man, but I really admire it in a woman. Are you ignoring me?
The number one principle in radio is to fill dead air. And so by our producer doing that, he gives you the opportunity to talk and introduce what show this is and talk about your team members.
But he hardly warned me. All he did was lift up one little finger and kind of pretended like he was warning me. So, it's...
Well... You did right.
But I was watching him because I thought I knew
it was the right finger, though.
It was
You're talking.
340-1590, 340-1590. This is the Team Martek Hour. I am Joe Martek. Joe Martek is a financial advisor, also called a stockbroker, also a securities principal. What's that mean? It means I've passed lots of tests. And it means I have to take a lot of continuing education courses constantly, and I don't ever pay attention. I just keep taking them. And it's one of the things, Alan, and attorneys have to take them. Certain people do in order to stay certified. Mm-hmm. It's a way to find out if you're fried. If the brain is gone, you're not going to pass all these tests.
So it's a good chance for you to sleep.
I know, good chance. That's it. So the concept of the show, way back, we started in 2004, was Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, and myself. And the object was very simple. Each had a different area of expertise. Each one had been in business a long time, even 15 years longer now. And for people to call in that had questions that each individually did not know, but as a group, we could cover most things. And then, over a period of time, as the economy changed, we added Ms. Victoria Loyd, Remax of Stewart. Just so you know about Victoria, she is the hardest working person alive. And I don't mean just realtor. This girl only has two speeds. She's either sleeping or working. And I think she eats when she's asleep. That way she doesn't waste any time. But there's nobody in the world that knows more about what happens in Martin and St. Lucie County. And the one thing you can count on 1,000%, if she tells you she's going to do something, she's going to do it. If she says she's going to call you at 3 in the morning, don't go to sleep because she'll do it. I mean, that's just the way she is. And Alan, I was talking to a fellow boating buddy of mine this morning, and both of us were complaining about people not returning phone calls and other, people in business, and you have to chase them to get them to take your money. And I mean, it just, I'm used to it now. I'm surprised when somebody does things the way they're supposed to, because I'm so used to being disappointed by, quote, other professionals. So when we put our show together and our team together, I wanted all experienced professionals, all that live here a long time, all that have offices here, but most importantly, that had integrity, that when they say something, they do it, and that you could count on them, you could depend on them. And we've been very, very, very fortunate with our group, which leads me to Mike Paulus, who's our mortgage broker. And when Ms. Victoria Loyd came in at the same time, this was at the height of the recession, there was all kinds of words out there that there was no mortgage financing available. There were all kinds of problems, and that was never true. It was never true. What did happen was It went back to the old rules where you had to prove that you could afford to make the payment. What a concept, huh?
What a concept.
What a concept. So simply they started doing ratios of income to debt, and if you had more debt than income, you did not qualify. If you had room left over that you could make a payment, you qualified. So, and that's basically the rule today. However, if Mike was here, he would also say that they're now doing these non-qualifying mortgages. Let's say somebody is retired and they've got Social Security income and that's all, but they've got $1 million in investments, and the $1 million generates $100,000 a year worth of income. Even though that is not what you call reliable income, they're counting that now. So they allows people that are substantial and who have good credit to qualify outside of the earned income scenario. Earned income means a job. If you don't have a job, but you've worked and you put together investments, whatever kind it might be, and you're generating enough income, literally there's mortgage money available for that.
Or if you have Social Security and a decent pension, you could qualify with that, and I would.
Well, see, the pension and Social Security are the same as earned income. I mean, those are very dependable, whereas investment income is not dependable.
True.
So there comes why they look differently at at investment income than they do from. On the other hand, somebody's got an 800 credit score and $1 million sitting in investments. They're a pretty good risk.
I got a dumb question for you.
Yeah, but you resemble that.
I know that. What if you are from California
You got a problem,
and you get a pension from California,
right?
and now they're just giving IOUs?
They're giving what?
IOUs because the state cannot fund its pension. So
Why
what happens to your mortgage at that point in time?
Well, you still owe your mortgage. You still have to make
No,
the
I'm
payment.
well aware of that.
But here's what happens. Guess what? You just lost your house.
You
They're
lose
going to
your house.
foreclose. Yeah. Point is,
Oh,
if you can't make the payment, you got to go back to your lender and say, "Hey, lender, I just lost a portion of my income through no fault of my own. Can you help me?"
And if you're a highway patrolman or a teacher, that's a big part of your income.
Monster. So what happened? These retired teachers or quote police, etc., monster piece of their income. So it's a situation that if you're a lender going to give you a mortgage, they are going to look at, let's say, if you have a pension from XYZ state and XYZ state is in trouble, they may turn you down. The whole concept is real simple. Nobody wants to loan you money if you can't pay it back. So it's just that.
Exactly, yeah.
And I talk to my broker-dealers in California, and I talk to my people that are working out there, and I said, what's the price of gas now? He said, yeah, it's $5 a gallon. It just goes on and on and on. That I would hate to be a liberal in California right now trying to justify my existence because it's tough. California's, I think they're worse than Massachusetts and in New Jersey and New York combined. So anyway, it's just, right? I mean, what's going on with California? You know better than anybody.
Well, they just voted last night for $98 million per year to fund immigrants.
That's only in California.
Yeah.
And where are they going to get the $98 million?
Probably for the pensions. I have no idea what the hell they're going to do.
Oh, 340.
I don't know.
Well, they're going to hate. You know what? It's an interesting thing. They talk about Silicon Valley and the tech industry in California, how big it is. But that tech industry could be moved in 1 hour, any place.
Try Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
They are exploding.
Yeah.
And they're all Silicon Valley companies.
Well, hey, and any company in the world wants to make sure their employees are happy. 1, 2, they want to make money. So if you can't make money and you can't make your employees happy, you're in deep trouble. Speaking of Ms. Victoria Loyd, which I spoke very nicely about you for the last 20 minutes because you're late.
Oh, I'm late. Wow, it's called traffic.
Oh, is that a standard excuse?
Yes, it is.
So I like that one.
And I'm always within 15 minutes, either early or late.
You know,
And I am. And I say, and look at it, it's 11:16, so I'm within my 15-minute
I have a
realm.
one-liner, though, but it has to do with my first ex-wife, and I can't use it, but that's okay.
You remember back that far?
No. Not really. It's okay. 340-1590, 340-1590. So I was just going through the group and explaining why you and Mike got involved, because all of the abuses and the craziness that went on with real estate, and then also about the misinformation.
Oh.
Because, you know, constantly there was people coming up saying things that were not true, and, you know, having you and Mike involved really helped straighten out a whole bunch of people.
It really did. And, you know, and we still go through people saying things. And it was funny because somebody was talking about a VA loan yesterday.
Right.
And we were looking at a property, and they said, oh, we can't get a VA loan on this because there's no hurricane shutters. But there isn't anything that says you have to have hurricane shutters. So a lot of people in their mind think things that stop them from doing things properly.
Yeah, but you have to understand where they got their information. They got it from an expert, a neighbor.
Yeah, well, that's, or a bartender.
Or bartender,
That's,
right?
I hate to say that, but people go into a restaurant, they're so excited because they're looking for property, and people tell them, well, you know, you can't do this, and you know you can't do that. Or you have to have this, or you have to have that. It's kind of crazy.
I had two buddies of mine, actually clients of mine. Dad died and left a big chunk of money. And what you're just saying, it was not just the bartenders, people that were, quote, their buds at the bar were telling them stuff. And, you know, it's an amazing thing because I have experience. I'm talking about this person that knows everything. They have direct experience, so you know they're an expert if they have direct experience.
Of course.
Now, credibility. Have you ever noticed people that might exaggerate a hair?
Yes.
Well,
A lot. And it's not just fishtails.
Not just fishtails. So the key thing is this. When I hear these things, I say, where did you get that information from? Well, a good buddy of mine, he just and I'm saying, really? I mean, I can't tell you how often I've heard, and I mean, as current as last week, well, I can't do a reverse mortgage. And I said, why? Because I'll lose my house.
Oh, I hear that all the time.
I mean, it's a constant
amazing.
thing, and it's never been true. It never will be true. And I said, where did you hear that from? Well, it's common knowledge. And I said, no, it's not. You know, there's no such thing as, it's your house. How do you lose your house? Well, you die. Then what happens? Goes to your estate. Well, then what happens? If you owe money on the house, the people that are inheriting the house have a choice. They can pay it off, and if the house is worth less than you owe, they can say, fine, take it back.
But you have one full year.
Yeah.
After they pass away, and that's the wonderful part about it. They don't even make you make a decision right away.
No.
And that's the scary thing, but nobody recognizes or understands it. And I've been through this with a lot of people that have no children, okay?
Yeah.
And they have no heirs, and they have no money, but they have equity in their home.
It's called why not? And it's tax-free money.
And I go, why wouldn't you want to do it? Well, I don't know. Well,
because, you know
Yeah,
what
but don't the fees eat you up, though?
no, and that's another misnomer. Yes, there is a little more money.
Wait a minute.
But that's not true either.
You ever pay closing costs when you buy a house?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. If you get a mortgage, do you pay closing costs?
Yes.
Sure.
No, don't keep thinking. That Jesuit learning, you're not supposed to think. Some things are easy. The answer is absolutely. Now, what happens is, you ever heard of escrows?
A what?
Yeah, I know. It's a good word, escrow. That's a lettuce, right?
I'll have to look that one up.
Escrow, too.
Escrow.
Yeah, escrow.
Anyway,
That sounds like a
what
Thai
happens
restaurant.
is you have to, when you get a mortgage normally today, have to put money into an escrow account to pay your taxes and insurance.
Sure.
Well, when they do a reverse mortgage, sometimes they want you to put a little bit more in there because you're not making a payment. They're going to make the payment in case you don't, because they need to protect their interest. So the concept is this. There might be certain things that are done that most people consider fees, but the actual amount of fees are almost the same for any kind of mortgage. It's you have to put money aside to cover certain contingencies.
Yeah, and I think the fees are just a little slightly higher than
Little bit, yeah.
But it's a higher risk for them because you're not making a payment. So let's talk about it. So you come to
Okay,
us.
so the house is paid for, say.
Right. Your house is worth $200,000,
Right.
and they give you a reverse mortgage for $100,000.
It depends on your age. There's a a formula.
Let's just take that 100 and put it in your pocket. It's your money. You never have to make a payment on that 100. One of these days you die. Now you owe 150.
Which is probably going to be soon for me.
I know. Well, your age it should be. But anyway, you owe 150 on the house. Now 10 years went by, and that's how much was accrued in interest. But in the meantime, that house went up in value too. So it's probably worth 300 now, and you owe 150. Your kids come along and say, "Huh? All I have to do is sell the house for 300. I pay off the 150, and I put 150 in my pocket, and I still get the Maserati." Because that is your kids, right?
It would be one of them.
Would be one of them. So all I'm trying to say is, it's just that simple. Now, I had actual clients that lived over in Vista on US 1 that at the height of the market, they had a 2-bedroom upstairs walk-up condo that appraised for $170,000.
Yeah.
And they got a reverse mortgage based on that 170, and they were pushing 80 when they got it. So they got a pretty healthy amount of money. So he dies, and she's going to move out. And she says, "Well, Joe, what do we do about that reverse mortgage?" And I said, "Nothing. But the house is only worth $50,000 now, and we got 100 and some odd thousand in our pocket." And I said, "Okay, where's the problem?" "Well, Joe, we owe that money." "Okay, it's a federally insured mortgage. Federally insured mortgage. The lender is protected. The federal government, which is us, basically insures each one of these mortgages so that in case the lender is upside down, the lender's protected. The client, why in the world would I ever contribute a nickel if I didn't have to? And I don't have to. So she eventually died, and then the daughter called me up. "Joe, they got this reverse mortgage." And I said, "Yeah, and the problem is, well, they took all the money out. They got 100 and some odd thousand, and the place is only worth 50. And I said, "And your point is?" "Well, what am I supposed to do?" And I said, "Nothing. There is no liability to you, the daughter, whatsoever. There's no liability to anybody whatsoever. Your folks, one, they got to have cash to play with that they never would have had because the government was stupid, because they looked at appraised values. All they cared about was appraised values at that time, and appraised values were sky high. You know, look at Vic when I sold my house in Sewell's Point. The poor guy that bought it from me ended up selling it for half of what he paid me.
Well, yeah, you sold it right before the hurricane.
I
right?
sold it right before the hurricane.
Oh,
Obscene amount of money as
Great
the market.
timing,
Yeah, I
great
mean, I
timing.
So
couldn't.
did he rebuild it and it's worth even more?
No, it's still not worth what he paid me.
It still is not.
Yeah, but he
Wow.
rebuilt the same house, and which I never would have. But anyway, he did. But it's okay. It's his decision. Of course, he got divorced, and I don't blame him for that. You know, his wife said, "You're the dumbest turkey in the world, giving Martek all that money for that house just so we could go under."
Yeah, but still, that wasn't your fault.
It was never
It
my fault.
appraised for
I
the
had it
value
appraised.
at the time.
When they appraised it, I said, "I can't afford to live in a house worth that much money." So put it
You
up for
sold
sa-
it.
Yeah.
Okay, at that time they used appraised value. What do they use now?
For what?
For what?
To value a house for
Appraised value.
Still
Still.
appraised.
For
Of
every
course.
mortgage. Every mortgage is based on an appraisal.
Appraised value.
An
Yeah.
independent third-party appraisal.
So you're saying the government is still stupid?
Well, here's what happened.
It really isn't the government.
The market was going straight up. It was a rule. Understand a rule. This is like being Catholic. Don't ask questions. You just are one. The point is, the rule says we give a mortgage based on appraised value. Well, when appraisals were going up 25 and 30 and 40% a year, we all looked around and said, well, that's not going to last forever. But guess what? We just let it ride, because what could we do about it? Nothing. If people wanted to buy a house and they'd say, well, boy, those markets going like crazy. Do you think it's ever going to stop? I would say, sure. Do you have any idea when? No. Well, then all of a sudden the axe fell.
Right.
And a lot of people, look, a great recession.
Yeah.
That was it.
I tell people whatever goes up must come down.
Well, that's a rule.
And it's the truth. I mean, that's in everything in life. We just don't know when.
Well-
I was a little surprised that the bubble busted as quickly as it did, but the reason it did was the media. The media came along and started saying things and put people in a panic.
Well, they always do.
And that's
but
what
there is
happened.
something else, though, too. You know, a used house is supposed to cost less than a new house. A used house is
Says who?
Well, no.
It does in value when you go to build it.
The truth is, new house has everything brand new, it costs more. A used house has used stuff, it's depreciated. Now, the land underneath it may not depreciate, that goes up in value, but the house itself. So if we go to California, you buy that 800 square foot house for $1 million. No, you're buying a lot for $1 million, and they're throwing on top of it a free house. You understand what I'm saying? So literally, what happens is when it comes to the rule of real estate is, if I can buy a used house and it costs me more than a new house, there's something wrong with the system, and that's where this whole debacle started to happen, to fall apart.
Correct.
Speaking of California, we were talking to our son the other night, and he said our old neighborhood in the Marina Del Rey, a one-bedroom apartment, is now $4,800 a month. One bedroom.
See,
Of course,
you know-
for a rental.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah,
and that's what's happening here too. I mean, even
well, it's
though
not happening like that.
not
Not 4,800.
But I'm just saying, for the areas, our area has gone up where rentals used to be $400, $450. Now a minimum's going to be $1,000 to even find something.
Anything.
A minimum
Around
of $1,000.
here?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Minimum is around
Wow.
1,500 is more realistic.
Yeah, but a minimum.
Yeah.
It's very
That's a
hard.
mortgage.
Well, of course it is.
But
what's
there you go again.
when the economy gets good, when full employment is here, there are people still that are victims of the recession whose credit doesn't allow them to go out and buy a house. That some people haven't corrected their credit. So you're going to have more and more tenants for a period of time. You know, this is an interesting thing, Greg. Back in the 70s and in early 80s, I used to do rental conversions. Vic, you know, back then we were doing rental conversions all over the state. And what happened was Orlando became a real big basis for rental conversions because they did a study back in the late 70s that said they needed 3,000 new rental units. So guess what happened? They built 30,000. But that's, everybody reads the same study. So all of a sudden, money's available to finance these things. Now there's too many of these. So then we started converting them to condos, and we could then buy the rentals cheap enough that we could sell them as condos. Little minor thing got in the way, 17% mortgages.
But we did very well with 17% when we sold out
We
one of our big projects here in Port St. Lucie.
Yeah, but we
did it in 90 days.
However, yeah, well, that was, listen, that's just,
Whoa.
that's because I'm a flaming genius.
No, because I did all the work.
Well, that too.
Oh my gosh,
That's
Mr.
part.
Genius.
That's part of
but
it.
hey,
Yeah.
listen, you work
As he calls me on his boat or something,
You'll
like,
be-
oh yeah,
hey,
where's my lobster, Joe?
See, that's part of the genius.
But I ate,
you
I
did
ate
the
it
work.
for you.
I didn't
You-
want it
you loved
anyway.
it.
I didn't want it anyway.
340-1590, 340-1590. Anyway, so the concept of the group, very simply, Ms. Victoria Loyd, Remax of Stewart, the hardest working realtor known made to man. And I say this about you all the time, Vic. The most important part of you is integrity. You can't make you lie.
That's true, and I just went through a deal when the real estate agent on the other side said, I've never met anybody like you before, and that's a compliment coming from another agent. And
Well-
you know, I could have sold a very high-end home of this couple, but there were some issues, and even though we had a cash buyer, I still raised the questions of these issues, and
Hey.
we're not going to do it because in the long run it would have been a big problem.
Well, the other side of the coin is, and in fact, I know one particular young lady who I was going to have her talk to you some years ago. She went and became, quote, licensed realtor, went to work for a broker, and she actually sold something. And then she went through one of his classes, and he basically said, okay, in order to be successful, you have to lie.
Ooh.
Really?
And
really?
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
believe that.
In
Yeah.
so many words.
Well, I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah,
here's
okay.
what
All right, well,
happened. It was
yeah.
called, okay, you take a listing, and let's say those people want to list it for $600,000, but it's only worth $400,000. Well, you take the listing and you lie to them, and then you work them for the next 6 months to lower the price. Don't tell them the truth up front. Well, and that's, you know, and in fact, how many times have we seen that happen?
Every day of my
I mean,
life.
everybody, and it's a sad thing. Now, somebody says to Victoria Lloyd, "Okay, I want to get 600." She'll say, "Well, it's only going to appraise for about 400." Well, we don't care. We want to list it for 600. Well, it probably won't sell unless you get a cash buyer that doesn't know what they're doing. All right, we'll take the chance. All right, I'll take the listing, but understand, here's the truth, right?
Then they get upset because there's never a showing.
And what happens? Nobody has traffic coming by because everybody looks at all these different listings and say, "Oh, skip that one. It's $200,000 overpriced." You know, and the reality is this. You know, people. One of the sayings is, "Don't fall in love with something you want to sell." Now, I know people. I bought a boat from a guy one time, and he turned down a New Yorker that was going to give him full price because the guy had an attitude.
I would do something like that.
You know what I'm saying?
I would do something like
So
that.
I came in and I talked to the broker in between. I said, "No, I don't want to insult this guy. Just tell me what's the deal going to be because I want the boat." He said, "Well, this is what happens." This seller was the greatest guy in the world. Took me out to lunch. Put 100 gallons worth of free fuel in the boat. Put in extra. The boat was better than brand new because he was an engineer. You know, engineer types. That's what you want to buy everything from. And if he saw that boat 6 months after I got it, he would have shot me.
Absolutely. I agree.
Thanks so much. Right? Martek is not.
There's all the beer cans piled up in there.
Well, it wasn't necessarily that, but the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Where he kept it pristine, I don't understand that word.
Well, it seems to me there's a correlation between the real estate market and the equity market, that when interest rates are low, stocks generally do very well. And when interest rates are high, meaning companies aren't be able to make as much money as they do in a low interest rate environment, stocks decline.
Well, you know, it's very simple what you just said, which is absolutely the truth. Each time the Fed has increased interest rates, they're doing that to slow down the economy. And it works because you put people out of work, you've slowed down the economy. So every time we watch this roller coaster, and the Fed has never been able to find this middle ground. So far, under this administration, the middle ground has been working phenomenally well, and even the experts can't figure out why. Because when you have full employment, we should have inflation, and we're not. Now, of course, they don't count food and energy, which all the stuff that would cost most of our money, but the reality is this. We're into this Goldilocks economy right now, and the media, you were saying it earlier, is looking for everything in the world to make it worse because they just can't believe that it can keep going on. Like gross domestic product, the first quarter was 3 point something or other. Well, nobody predicted more than 2. It's amazing how all of these pollsters.
Yeah, now they're talking 1%.
This quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, how can you have full employment and have no growth for GDP? They don't rhyme. You have to have, if you had big unemployment, we're obviously going to slow down growth big time, and GDP will be down.
CNBC is claiming it's the tariffs.
See, and the tariffs haven't even affected one dime in anybody's pocket yet because it takes a period of time for them to come in. And then it was interesting that I was listening to one of the soothsayers saying that the average person is going to have about $800 a year if all the tariffs come in to play, that it's going to cost you that much more per year. However, 600 of the 800 have nothing to do with the tariffs. It's the fact companies are relocating out of China to Vietnam, to Cambodia, to other places, and the cost of moving machinery, setting up and redoing represents 75% of this, quote, new cost. In the meantime, you know how the Dems always want to raise taxes? Well, technically, that's what this is. It's a tax on every single person in America. The tariffs are. I don't care how you want to count it, because that money, if it costs me more to buy something and a portion of that goes to the government in the form of a tax or a fee, that goes into the coffers supposedly to pay for the golf trips or the jet, something.
And all of it.
Right?
Not just that, all of it. The golf and the jets.
Yeah, I know.
And the food.
340-1590, 340-1590. And Alan, you're being awfully quiet today. What's the matter? You falling asleep here?
Well, you've had a very interesting discussion on real estate, and I learn a lot every time you and Victoria are able to discuss it.
You know what happens is, and we're a blessed group, there's no doubt about this, that we have roughly 200 years worth of combined experience, because all of us have been in business a long, long time. And it's one of the great things that, was it Dan Warren, if he was sitting here, he said, you know, old age is an accumulation of mistakes. because you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn, and the older you get, in theory, the less mistakes you make, because that sharp stick in the eye hurts, and after a while you realize you don't like that stick in your eye, so you quit doing stupid things. But
That's when you have a cocktail and you forget to take out the little stick
we're
with
not
the
talk-
olives.
we're not talking about Italian
That's
women.
how you stick it in your eye.
No, Italian women, they always do that. Never worry.
I know. It's like, why do I have that pain in my eye? Well, honey, you forgot to take out the little knife with the olives.
Well, pretty soon they won't have any plastic straws, so they're going to make them out of wood, right?
Wood? They're making them out of paper.
Well, wood is
That
good.
is wood.
Well, I mean,
Come on.
Well, paper comes from wood, trees.
Oh, right, okay.
Well, it's the way
Oh.
you were saying it. I'm thinking of a wood. You know, my brain sees a piece of wood that's got a hole in it. How could you say something like that, Joe?
Are you done yet? I'm kind of liking this.
It's my blonde day.
I'm just going to say.
Man, I'm confused.
Me too. I'm not confused. It's just what Joe says. How he says it.
That's just what
So-
Joe said. Joe confuses me. Have I ever confused you in your whole life?
No.
Yeah, right.
I'm getting worried because she said it's her blonde day, and we're on color television here, and you don't look very blondish
Well, I am.
today.
Well, I have. I'm a reversible, like a jacket, where one side is one, and then the other color's another.
She has to go home and get her wig and put it
I'm
on.
like a reversible jacket. Believe me, depends on the day.
340-1590, 340. I will tell you one of the things about Victoria, and I'm taking you back when I was in real estate and I was the broker of record on these jobs, and Victoria would run the projects. I don't think I ever saw her come back with any prospect, whether they bought or not, that wasn't happy. Every single person was happy, because meeting Victoria makes you happy. And it truly did. The people all love her.
And I think, you know, I still have relationships over 30 years with these people that are still alive. Some of them are not.
Hey,
But I have relationships.
I got to
with
tell you
them.
my favorite story about a real estate professional. You're going to like this one. And I'll never forget this little girl. Back, we had years and years ago, this was in the 70s, we had this high-rise condominium sitting on the Gulf of Mexico with no sold units. Bank had taken it back. And we had this sales girl named Denise, and Denise was about your size, Victoria. She's real cute. She's like 24, 25, 23. She was Miss Bubbles. And the way we would sell the real estate, first people would come in and we'd have a little tour of the thing, showing pictures and stuff from the community and what's going on, just to educate people. And then she hit the elevator and going to take people upstairs. So it was pretty much the first minute where she wasn't talking. And invariably, the people would look at her because she was cute as a bug, and they'd say, "Are you married?" And she'd go, "No." And they say, "Well, really, do you have a boyfriend?" And right now, at the elevator, you'd hear her. And they'd say, "Oh, honey, what's wrong?" She'd get on the elevator. She had the rattiest guy, biggest jerk you've ever known for a boyfriend. She loved him, and this guy was pathetic. By the time she got back, these people had her married to a relative. They were hugging her and loving her. She sold more real estate than anybody alive. But you know what happened?
No. died.
Boyfriend dumped her. She couldn't sell anymore. She wasn't sweet anymore. Now she was a professional. It was so funny.
Really?
Oh, man. This
Yeah.
girl, the reason she was so wonderful, she was vulnerable and open and honest. Then all of a sudden, she wasn't open and vulnerable and honest anymore. She was just a show and tell person.
Yeah.
And you know, Vic, what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
and I still have all those.
We see people constantly
Yeah, we do.
that don't build any rapport with their people.
Alan, do you understand this show?
I understand the people on the show, except for Mr. Martek. But
Except for was that a setup question?
I think it's his blonde day too. Well, let me tell you a scenario. So listen to this. This is a new one. So I'm not going to mention areas or names again, like we talked about before. So if you have a project that you build, and you have water rights, so you can put your boat dock. So when you bought this house, you know, they started the project over 30 years ago. They built the boat docks that they assigned to every owner. So you had an assigned dock over 30 years.
Go ahead.
So it's owned by the association, the docks are, but you still have it assigned and you'll always have that
It's
dock.
in the documents.
That's exactly right. Now, somebody comes along, because your water rights are across the street.
What if the county changes the
No,
rules?
but I don't know. But let's
Wait,
just say
yeah.
somebody comes along and they build a house right in front of the dock, because there's a lot there, and they build right in front of the dock. And these are assigned docks for the homes behind you.
The homes behind it own riparian rights, quote, and they have a piece of land.
Right. They have they call the bottom rights.
Yeah.
They call them the bottom rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all. That's big words, riparian.
Oh, I get you.
Riparian.
I get you. Yeah.
So then they come along, and this guy builds a house and says, "Oh, now I own the bottom rights, and you have to move this dock."
You see, now here comes another problem. The attorney that drafted this thing was one that we used to call FDR.
Watch what you say, Joe.
There are people out there that write these.
Do I need to push the red button soon?
Really soon?
He doesn't mean the fire department. Okay, go ahead.
But there are attorneys out there that do these documents that should have been shot to start with, and they get them recorded, and they still should have been shot. And people buy these things, and they should still shoot the guy that did these documents because they weren't done properly. Very simple.
But we don't know yet.
No,
Now,
you don't. 30
now
years.
they have to hire attorneys,
Yeah.
and they have to assess everybody there to hire this attorney to see how he got the right,
Exactly.
the bottom right.
And unravel all of it.
And unravel.
But-
If you can. If you
But
can.
the point is, if he is correct, that dock has to be moved. He doesn't care that it's moved because he wants it moved between other docks that are there already on the other side.
Anyway.
But that's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And now, because it's 30 years down the road, a lot of these docks need to be repaired anyway because they're just not as stable as they used to. So you're talking a large assessment to each one of the owners of the properties.
The moral of this story is
The moral to the story is, it's just interesting, and
no, there is a moral here. The moral of the story is here's where a good realtor comes in handy. Number one, that says, okay, fine, here's a community with a lot of history. I know the history, and I know the problems. Don't just do it blindly. There are documents. There are potential for lawsuits
and
with
that's
these
where
documents.
I came in to stir this up because
So you save somebody a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of legal ramifications, and I can't tell you over the years. I got into real estate in '76, out in '90, but $750 million later, multiple communities all over the place. You remember we used to write documents. I used to write condominium
I
documents.
know we used to get them submitted
Then
to
I
the
have
state.
to send them. Anyway, the whole thing that I have seen were the abuses and things that were overlooked because of mistakes. That's why when I joke about certain attorneys, it's not really a joke because the people that end up owning that real estate long term are going to inherit those mistakes.
Of course. And they don't know the difference. Even
No.
though you read these, everybody always says, oh, here's some great reading for you. Most people don't even read them.
I have an
How many of those documents are like boilerplate type things?
Most, but they have certain areas in there that are very specific, like surveys. There has to be a new survey base, and it has to show every single lot, has to show things. And if we have certain rights, there has to be an area in there that goes and says, why do we have those rights? Are those rights paid for? Is it recorded?
And how long are they for?
Sure.
It could be a
And
lease.
a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And there's where your problems lie. And I am so strict about this when I sell any kind of properties that have to have these because I'm so used to doing it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of the associations say, Victoria, you're the only one that ever really pushes this because most people just try to go around the associations
yeah.
just to one, like Joe says, all they want to do is make a sale, and they don't care what could happen to you later on.
Right.
For me, if I know it or I can protect you from something like that, I do the best I can. Now, like I said, we had a cash buyer, but I kept bringing up these issues that even the seller didn't really realize how severe it was.
The key thing is this. If you walk into something with your eyes open and you're educated, it's okay. Go ahead, make a mistake. It's your decision. I've seen people buy pieces of real estate that I would never touch with a 10-foot pole, but they knew up front what they were getting. And they figured that they could ride the storm, correct the problem, given time. Now, you and I both know fighting with the county or the cities in Florida only gets tougher and tougher and tougher. Back years and years ago, We had areas we wouldn't even think of building a piece of real estate. We wouldn't even go in that county under any circumstances because this county would take 6 months, this county would take 2 years.
Look at the one with the woods, when we were doing the woods.
Yep.
Oh, look what we went through with that.
All it amounts to is there's multiple different properties that had different problems because of politics. So now, sometimes these documents are slanted based on politics. Isn't that exciting? So you now are the consumer and you don't have a clue what's going on and you're going to buy this thing. So it's a very interesting journey. So I'm not big on associations, period, whether condos or that, even though we used to do a ton of them. But there are some extremely good documents out there and written by good attorneys.
Yeah, but you have to be careful, and it kind of blew my mind because in my mind, until we know the final answers, is how can somebody come and say now they own the bottom rights that have been there for over 30 years, and these people have used this before. By saying that he has documents that somebody gave him the rights. Who was it the old developer? How would he give him the rights? I mean, I don't understand.
Well,
And was it in writing?
Well, yes, it had.
Well,
to
he's
be.
trying to say he has something in
It
writing,
has to
and
be.
ours was in writing.
See,
So we got to see who
who's-
had the right to give up the rights.
There you go. Now there comes
Bingo.
Hey, it's called whoever did it last or did it right or did it first. There's words and words and words that have to be in there. But
Well, I think about us when, you figure we moved here from L.A., didn't know anybody.
right.
But I mean,
Still don't know that
thinking
many.
about that situation, and it's like, my goodness, we'd be dead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't have any local knowledge.
Well, I'm your devil's advocate. I tell them. I said, now I tell this to my buyers. I'm throwing all this at you, and it's only because I'm trying to protect you. So as long as we know the answers to this, then you're going to be fine. So I just tell people whatever I know, my knowledge, I'm going to pass it on to you.
There you go.
And then if for some reason it all comes out good and you're happy with it, then that's fine. Because like Joe said, there are some people that will say, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I feel I'm getting a good value. I feel I want to live here. And they're giving you an estimate of what the end result might be. And some people, but then I make them sign a statement that they're fully aware of this and they've had every opportunity to change their mind.
That reminds me of people that want to buy penny stocks, and I hear it all the time, especially marijuana stocks, And do you sell those, Joe? Yeah, I do. Okay, I want to buy 5,000 shares at 10 cents a share of XYZ company. Okay, you got to sign a piece of paper that says you're dumb as a stump, that it wasn't my idea, that you're willing to lose all your money.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
they have
I'm
to
paraphrasing, but that's what it says because it's high risk. Alan, you know that.
Right. You just mentioned stocks. What a beautiful segue, because I think we should talk a couple of minutes about stocks, because since yesterday morning, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down almost 3%. It's down 352 points as we speak just today alone. But, Joe, you have investments that can protect people.
Of course. And one of the things that happens, and by the way, the stock market works more on perception than it does reality.
Right. And that's exactly what we're getting now. People are fearing China. People are fearing what they're going to do with the Mueller investigation and all of
this
that.
Stuff. And I've often said the big guys run out the little guys every once in a while. So and Alan, here's my buddy Alan. Alan's been sitting in cash for a month, waiting to jump back in when the market bottoms so he can buy these things at a bargain.
Right.
And nothing wrong with that. The key is being a market timer is not that easy.
No, and sometimes you hit it wrong. Like there have been many times where I've stayed in cash. Oh, I don't think this market's going to last.
And there have been times when you have bought something and made a mistake.
Right, but
nobody wants to admit those.
No, absolutely not.
See, Alan told me he was going to buy this place. I don't understand.
Yeah, but he wanted
haven't
you
come
to
down
carry the
yet.
paper. He's going to give you $2 down.
No, I said $1.99.
$1.99.
Well,
$1.99, yeah.
I made an offer to Greg. I said, I'll buy this place for $1 million in Confederate money, and he never responded to me.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to write him a bad check. Same thing.
No, that's a
Yeah, then
crime.
you're going to go to jail, Joe.
No, but not if he knew it was bad up front.
Hey,
It's a loophole.
So then our new station would be the Jailhouse Rock.
Wait a minute. Jailhouse.
Jailhouse, right? Hey, speaking of what Alan was saying, let's just take the S&P 500, which right as of this minute is up roughly 12% for the year. So far, year to date, it's up roughly 12%. That's 500 of America's biggest companies doing business all over the world. The S&P 500, 500 of America's biggest companies for the last 90 years has averaged 9.8% per year. 9.8% per year since it started like in 1927 or something, but 90 years. So what is that represented? Well, if you think America's going to go out of business, one, nothing we have has got any value. People say, well, I'm going to get gold. And I'll say, what are you going to do? Go in the grocery store with a slab of gold and you're going to take and shave some off to get a loaf of bread?
Here's a brick.
Here's
Go
a brick.
for it.
It's a brick you can use to build a house. Anyway, the concept is we are in America. This is the land of milk and honey. We are in the greatest nation on earth. Politically, there's always going to be aggravation and grief. But the Standard & Poor's 500 has averaged 9.8% per year for the last 90 years. However, there have been years it's gone down 20 and 25%, and there have been years it's gone up 20 and 25%. Under Clinton, I think we had 5 years in excess of 20% a year.
We did.
Yeah. And what happened 2 years ago, the S&P 500 was up almost 20. It was up 19 point something percent. So it's going to go up and down every year, but in reality, it's averaged roughly 10. So one of the people come and say, but Joe, I'm an old person. I'm 70, and I'm scared because what if I die on the wrong day and the market's down? My kids don't get a Maserati, they get a Pinto. Now,
They don't
Greg,
even
are you
make
worried?
those
Are you
anymore.
worried about your kids getting a Pinto?
They
I
don't
love
make
a
them
Pinto.
anymore.
Oh,
They
I know.
don't make them anymore.
Well, Pintos are very expensive because they're collectible now. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say
I want
is,
a Yugo.
Yugo, that's the best one. So the point is that most people want their money protected, especially when they're not so young. So what happens is there is an annuity contract that basically says we will put you in the market, and I'm using the S&P 500 as an example. Any one particular company says you can be invested 100% in that. You don't have to be, but you can be. But then reality is this. They say, here's what we're going to do. If you qualify, we're going to guarantee your money so in case you die, your family's protected. Not only will they guarantee the money, they'll say we're going to guarantee you the highest quarter every time it goes up. We'll bump it up, or 5% a year. If you qualify for it, you have to be under a certain age to get into it. But the key thing is this, you're protecting your family in case you die on the wrong day. But then the same person says, Joe, what if I don't die? I need to get an income. Okay, same scenario. They'll say, here's what we'll do. You put in this $100,000. We're going to show you an income of 5 to 6% per year, every year, for the rest of your life. And then once a year, market goes up, you go up. So let's say you put in 100, and 1 year later it's worth 150. Not going to happen, but let's just say it did. 5% on 100 is 5,000. 5% on 150 is 7,500. So now you're going to get $7,500 for the rest of your life. Market goes down to 50,000, it crashes. You stay at the 7,500 for the rest of your life or until the market comes back up again. So if you don't die, there's a chance you can get a raise. If you die, forget that word if. When you die, your family's protected. Now, my compliance people say you have to know the claims paying ability of the insurance company. One of the things that I deal with, and most of the people that I consider my peer group only deal with the A-rated companies, the best companies out there. I love these type of things because it lets me sleep knowing my clients are protected, and it lets the client sleep. Hey, I can be in the market. I can cash this thing in. And by the way, all your money goes to work for you on the first day when you get into one of these things. So they charge you penalties in case you want to cash the whole thing in, because when all your money goes to work for you the first day, nothing was held out for commissions, fees, or expenses, which there are. So usually the penalty phase starts off at 7 or 8% a year and goes down every year until after 7 years there's no penalty. During that 7-year period, you die, no penalty to your family, and you can take income, no penalty. And if it earns too much money, you can cash that baby in and run. I mean, there's all kinds of flexibility. The key thing that I worry about, and I hear it every week, are words called index annuities. They get confused with, they say, the S&P 500 index and then a contract called an index annuity. The index annuity, you are not in the market. You are not in the market. Most people are totally confused by these things, and I have seen people get taken advantage of. Had a lady in with a very large sum of money, very, very astute person, well educated, and she was taken to the cleaners. I called the company up directly with her sitting there on a speakerphone, and I said, if you'd have known these things that I asked the questions of the company directly, would you have bought these things? She goes, of course not. Under no circumstances would I have bought them. The guy, she said he lied to her. I said, well, he probably didn't lie to you. He just didn't tell you the whole truth. He only told you the things that sounded good. He didn't tell you the negatives. And there was multiple negatives that you'll need to learn to ask. Be careful of that word, index annuity.
Joe, on a variable annuity, most of them, you can take about 10% a year out of the variable annuity without penalty. Is that correct?
Yeah, sometimes even more. All the earnings, some of them allow. Now, understand this. Back to the index. Very often, they allow you to take money out, but sometimes they pay no interest on it. You're taking your own money out. I mean, they got all kinds of...
So you've earned nothing and you're getting your own money back earning nothing.
Isn't
And
that
then at
exciting?
the end, you have a lot less money.
Yeah. There's all kinds of things you have to be very careful of. Why some of these things were ever allowed to be legal, it just amazes me. But more importantly is they're misrepresented, or instead of using that word, they are not totally explained.
That's the problem.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's just no different than selling real estate. Gee, I'm not going to tell you the stuff that you don't want to know about because you wouldn't buy the house from me, even though I'm breaking the law. Because
That's right.
you're supposed to expose
And that's
everything.
why even our office, we do a general disclosure, and we say there's a nuclear plant. We have railroads. You are going to pay property. You have to tell people.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, well, I didn't know there was a nuclear plant. I didn't know you had railroads. I didn't know you had these things.
Yeah.
And then if they say you didn't, then you say, look, you signed it. We told you 100 times.
You see, the biggest problem I know is that you make them put in there that there's a short Italian woman in the neighborhood?
No.
Joe,
Because I'm a blonde. I'm tall. I got long legs.
Joe, we have 1 minute, and I hope next week people will use our phone number, 340-1590.
Yeah, it was quiet today.
No Mike,
we
no
were-
Mike today,
No
and no Bulldog?
Yeah,
Bulldog, if you're listening, I hope that tongue's doing better, my man. If you're not calling, I hope it's not because you're hurting. But if you are hurting,
We're thinking about you.
yeah,
Yes.
well, I can't say everything I want to say on the radio, Bulldog, but you understand that. 340-50. You said 30 seconds, Chief? See, he's got these little hand
Less than
signals
that
here that I
now.
got to catch him out of the corner of my eye. He tries to sneak them by
The
me.
machete is coming toward you, Joe. It's almost time to say goodbye.
I think it is time to say
Bye-bye.
goodbye. Until next week.
Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.